to government. We are Unit 2. Okay, the Civil War. There's a number of reasons why that war was fought. One of the biggest ones was slavery. And as a result of the Civil War, the North won, the anti-slavery side won. And 3 amendments were passed right after that. The 13th Amendment was passed right at the end of the war, 1865, and that said no more slaves. Slavery is absolutely abolished from all of America. The 14th Amendment passed in 1868. That is the one that said that every citizen, or a citizen is anyone born here in America. Everyone. So when you hear in the news talking about people wanting to have their babies born in America so that they can be a citizen, well, that's the 14th Amendment. And that was to make sure that all these former slaves that were freed were counted as citizens, because technically they weren't citizens before. So they had to pass this amendment to say, okay, not only you're free, but you're one of us. People may not have actually treated them that way, but the law was supposed to from that point on, because everybody is a citizen according to the 14th Amendment, no exceptions, and you get all the full rights and benefits, and have all the same duties and responsibilities. 15th Amendment. 15th Amendment was passed in 1870, and that was the one that also made sure that everybody could vote. You can't discriminate against people for voting based on race, gender, or age. 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment was passed in 1913. Before 1913, yes, there was taxes, but they were like taxes you paid at the end of the year. You didn't have taxes come out of your paycheck. So that paycheck that you have, where you have all that money being taken out of it for a lot of reasons, a big portion of them being taxes, that didn't exist. In fact, up until the 16th Amendment was passed, that was illegal. Your employer could not do that. The government could not do that. But the government wanted to do that because they realized we don't have enough money to do things that we want to do, like fight wars. So they passed the 16th Amendment, and all the states were all for it because, hey, more money is more money. So that as a result of the 16th Amendment, it is now completely legal to take money out of your paycheck in the form of taxes. 18th Amendment. The 18th Amendment says no more booze, no more beer, no more wine, no more drinking any alcoholic beverages at all. It was part of this huge purity movement where, especially by women's groups, saying that this is the problem of America. This is why sin is happening. This is why people make bad decisions and why corruption exists. And our children are going to grow up to be terrible people because people are drinking alcohol. So if we make an amendment to the Constitution that says all states, all citizens can't drink alcohol, then no one will drink alcohol ever again because no one breaks the law, ever breaks the law, and this country will be a better place because no one will drink alcohol because there's a law saying you can't. And people drank anyways. Actually, the business just went underground. And it was the time period known as Prohibition, which is the 18th Amendment. It had some of the most crime in our history. In fact, at that point, it had the highest crime rate by far. It shot up in history because everybody was selling it now under the table. Al Capone, you may or may not have heard of his name. He was the most wealthiest, powerful, organized crime kingpin of that time. And if you adjust for inflation, he is arguably the richest man that ever lived in all of American history, based on the illegal sale of booze. Now, this was gang territory. Al Capone ran a gang. So it was violent. People were killed fighting over territories and selling liquor. So finally, in the 1930s, they passed the 21st Amendment because they realized that just because you pass a law doesn't mean everyone's actually going to follow it. And in this case, very few people followed it. So 21st Amendment actually struck out and drew lines through the 18th Amendment so that it doesn't exist anymore. The 18th Amendment is gone because the 21st Amendment, which is the only way you can change an amendment, is to write a new amendment cancels it out. The 19th Amendment. The Constitution has always said that all men are created equal, and literally speaking, that meant that women don't get those votes, and they're not considered equal citizens until the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. After decades of fighting for the right to vote, women finally would get granted the right to vote. The 19th Amendment was passed. The 22nd Amendment. Big tyranny alert! The 22nd Amendment was passed in 1950, 51, and the point of this amendment was that through the 30s and 40s we had the same president. Franklin D. Roosevelt, he ran for president 4 times and ran 4 times in a row. And now he is fortunately considered one of our better presidents. He helped get us through World War II. He helped pull us out of the Depression. There's a lot of criticisms and flaws in the man, but overall, one of our better presidents. But what if he wasn't? And that's tyranny, when too much power control goes into the hands of one man. And a lot of people said that's what happened with Franklin Roosevelt, because he was president for so long. Everyone got used to him just being in power, so everyone would go to him and offer favors to him, and he became much more powerful than probably any president before him and any president after him. Again, fortunately, he was a good president, but if he wasn't, that would have been really, really bad. So George Washington had set the precedent, the model of 2 terms and you're out. Well, the 22nd Amendment said, just to make sure that Franklin D. Roosevelt doesn't happen again, who maybe be an evil Franklin Roosevelt, let's pass the 22nd Amendment saying you get to be president twice. You can run for 2 terms and that's it. You can never be president again. The 24th Amendment, passed in 1964. Okay, we already talked about that African Americans could be full citizens, that get all the rights, all the freedoms, all the benefits of being a citizen, right? Well, a lot of people in America weren't happy with that, and they found loopholes. There's a lot of ways they did this. One of them is poll taxes. That meant if you wanted to vote, you had to actually pay a tax before they let you vote. Now, at this time, most African Americans were greatly impoverished. And while the poll tax really wasn't that much money for someone as poor as most black families at that time, that could be meals for your family. So they were unofficially not allowed to vote because they couldn't afford to pay the poll tax, the voting tax. Realizing that this was causing African Americans to lose their freedoms, their rights to have voice in government, this amendment was passed to make sure that nothing would get in the way of allowing a citizen to vote. You can't have poll taxes. You can't have reading tests. Right now, there's a big controversy over some states who passed a voter ID requirement, meaning you have to show a voter ID. Well, many people are arguing now that's a poll tax because you have to pay to get a voter ID, and there are a lot of poor people who don't have an ID, or they have an expired one and they can't afford at election time to buy a new one. So, and they're waiting to save up money. That means they don't get to vote. That means they're losing their ability to have voice in government. So the 24th Amendment said no more poll taxes. You can't charge people to vote. Okay, finally, the 26th Amendment. 26th Amendment was passed in 1971. It was at the tail end of the Vietnam War. Before the 26th Amendment was passed, the voting age was 21. But you had to join the military and the draft at age 18. That means you could be told that you had to go to a foreign country and die, potentially die, but you had no ability to tell your congressman, to tell your representatives whether you thought that was a good idea. You had no ability to vote. That's your voice in government. That's how you get your opinion expressed and heard, is voting. If you can't vote, you're silenced. So if you're old, a lot of people are arguing, if you're old enough to die, then you're old for our country, then you're old enough to vote for our country. Because now your life is at stake. you should have a voice in government if you could potentially pay the ultimate price. So after thousands of young men died over in Vietnam, finally this amendment was passed, lowering the voting age to age 18 in 1971. Because again, if you're old enough to die for your country, then you should be old enough to tell your congressman, tell your president, mayor, governor, whoever, whether you think this war that you're being sent to possibly die in is worth that sacrifice.